She was barefoot on the kitchen island, twirling an olive between her fingers, smiling like she'd just told me we won a trip to Bora Bora. So, yeah, Aaron and I already booked the flights. It's been years, Adam. You're not one of those insecure guys, right? I stared at her, then the olive, then back at the receipts on the table. 4,600 catering deposit, 7,800 venue balance, and the final invoice from the band she insisted we fly in from Denver. She'd circled the price in pink highlighter and written, "So worth it." "I'm not insecure," I said. "Have a safe flight." Her smile twitched for a half second. I noticed. She thought she'd cornered me into reacting, maybe arguing, pleading, stomping around the kitchen like some jealous caricature of a fiancé. That's what Aaron probably would have done. But instead, I uncapped my pen and drew a neat line through final seating chart on my wedding checklist. That was the last thing I checked off as her future husband. Later that night, she was humming in the shower. I sat in my office, glass of bourbon in one hand, the other scrolling through an old spreadsheet I hadn't opened in months. Prenup considerations, draft. It felt like rereading a prophecy. I opened a new folder on my desktop, labeled it Exit Plan, dragged the prenup file inside, then created another subfolder, PI, licensed only. If you've been engaged, maybe you know this feeling. The dull buzz behind your eyes when the woman you've planned a life with tells you, with genuine cheer, that she's taking a romantic vacation with someone she used to sleep with. If you haven't, imagine paying for a house you won't live in, food you won't eat, and a future you've already been erased from. She called it a solo reset. Said Aaron was just tagging along because he knows Italy really well. I asked nothing. She offered everything. I just need to feel beautiful and adventurous before I settle down. You get that, right? I didn't answer. I was too busy making a mental inventory of everything I'd bought, built, or signed in our shared life. The couch, the lease, the dog, the ring, the wedding. It still amazes me how women like Tessa manage to make you feel like the villain for not applauding their recklessness. She called it radical honesty. I called it exit fuel. And before we go further, I'll just say this. If you've made it this far, it means the algorithm probably buried this under some vacation vlogs and makeup hauls. So if you're part of the 97% listening who aren't subscribed yet, take 2 seconds and hit that button. It helps my team make more of these. And yeah, it shows there are still a few of us out here who don't let betrayal go unanswered. Anyway, back to Tessa. She left 3 days later, suitcase wheels catching on the welcome mat I paid for. Said she'd text when she landed in Milan. She kissed me like a cousin, forgot her charger, and didn't look back. I didn't drive her to the airport. I didn't even walk her to the Uber. I just stood at the front window, coffee in hand, watching her leave like a UPS package I didn't remember ordering. As soon as the car disappeared, I turned to my laptop. The caterer was first. I canceled politely, forfeited the deposit, said we were going in another direction, then the florist, then the band, then the decorator. By 4 p.m., every vendor had been notified. The planner left a tearful voicemail. She'd loved working with us. Tessa's Instagram went up 12 hours later, a boomerang of her and Aaron clinking glasses on a rooftop in Florence. The caption, "Besties and Bellinis, Bachelorette, but make it Italian." Her friends flooded the comments. "Iconic. You're glowing. He's so supportive." One even tagged me, @AdamBuilt, "This is husband material." They were half right. I did build this, but they had no idea what I was building now. The wedding planner's voice cracked when I told her, "You're calling off the whole thing? But the vineyard's final walkthrough is in 2 days." I leaned back in the chair, opened the drawer to my right, and pulled out the folder labeled Venue Contract, Non-Refundable. I flipped to clause 14B. "Yes," I said, "effective immediately." She fumbled to be gentle, still thinking this was about cold feet or a big fight over centerpieces. If there's anything I can do to help mend things, there isn't. I hung up before she could shift into therapist mode. Let her wonder. Let everyone wonder. The florist was next, a cheerful man named Joel who'd spent 3 weeks emailing me about imported ranunculus and color stories. I told him to halt the arrangements and keep the deposit. "You sure, man? We ordered the blush varietals special for you guys. They're not cheap. Consider it a gift," I said. Then the caterer, same spiel, no refunds. That was fine. Every time someone said, Sorry, we can't give the money back. I just nodded and marked a box. I wasn't saving money, I was reallocating it into something far more efficient than fairy lights and fondant. While vendors were scrambling to cancel, Tessa was busy performing. I know because her profile went public again. First photo, a cappuccino with Aaron across the table, a little foam on his lip. My morning view. Second photo, a gondola ride in Venice, her head on his shoulder. Old memories, new clarity. Then came the kicker, a short video, posted to her story, of her laughing as he tucked a flower behind her ear. Still the only man who gets me, the caption read, followed by a heart. I didn't rage, I didn't text, I didn't call. Instead, I pulled up the email from a law firm I'd bookmarked 6 months ago. The subject line was Engagement Dissolution Claims by State. She never noticed me reading through case law while she showed me videos of first dances on TikTok. I scrolled through the attorney bios until I found one with a specialty in high conflict separation cases involving public defamation. Perfect. While she was busy glowing, I was reviewing a case where a man successfully reclaimed his grandmother's heirloom ring and recouped the full cost of a canceled wedding after discovering infidelity during the engagement. Precedent. Documented. That's when I remembered something. Our joint email account, made for RSVPs and logistics, was still syncing to my phone. I hadn't checked it in weeks. I opened it. Dozens of unread emails. One in particular stood out, from the Vineyard. Hi Adam and Tessa, just confirming your party size of 90 and your final food selections. We're still waiting on your song list. Also just confirming. Will your guest Aaron Maddox be seated with the groom's party or the bride's? Aaron, listed under the groom's party. Her idea, no doubt. I stared at it for a minute, then hit forward, sent it to myself, saved the PDF, renamed it evidenceaaronguest.pdf. One more thing for the folder. Tessa's next photo went up as the sun was setting in Tuscany. Candlelight dinner. 2 glasses of Chianti, only 2 place settings. Caption. Sometimes you don't realize what you need until you remember who you used to be. 1,000 likes, dozens of fire emojis, and not a single mention of the man footing the bill for the whole trip. Me. I wasn't watching her stories. I wasn't watching her at all. I was watching the clock. Because when she landed back home, I planned to give her a very different kind of welcome party. The PI's name was Carl. He answered on the 3rd ring with a voice like black coffee. Flat, no sugar. When I told him what I needed, he didn't ask why. Just said, "You want this done quiet or admissible?" "Both," I said. He met me the next morning at a diner 2 towns over. Gray jacket, laptop bag, breath that smelled like stale nicotine gum. He slid into the booth across from me and opened a beat-up folder. "Tell me everything you think you know," he said, pen hovering. "She flew to Milan with her ex. They're posting like it's an elopement, says it's a bachelorette trip." Carl didn't blink. "You want audio?" "No, I want timestamps. Hotel stays, who's paying for what, intimate behavior in public. Anything that shows this isn't some platonic art tour." "Got it." He clicked his pen. "You'll get a private link. I'll update it daily. If I need to burn cash for better angles, I do it. You want a line item budget?" I slid the canceled wedding invoice across the table. "No need. I've got 7,500 reasons not to care about budgets right now." He grunted. "Fair enough." While Carl flew out on the next red-eye, I went back to the condo, the one with the dual-signed lease and her Pinterest-inspired shoe rack still blocking the front closet. I poured myself a black coffee and opened the shared utility portal. In 30 minutes, I was off the water, gas, electric, and trash. I didn't cancel them. I just removed my name. If things got ugly, I wouldn't be legally responsible when she decided to stop paying and flee into her reset era. Next was the joint account we used for wedding expenses. We'd each contributed, but let's be real, I covered 90%. Her idea of budgeting was uploading avocado toast receipts to a shared folder called Tracking. I emptied my portion, then flagged the account for closure. Left her a healthy $137.19. Poetic, really. Just enough for 2 Bellinis and a ride back from the airport, assuming she still had a home. Carl's first update came 3 days later. I got the notification while brushing my teeth. The folder was labeled Verona Day 2. Inside, hotel invoice under her maiden name,
with a second guest listed. Screenshot of a tagged post from a local boutique. Gorgeous couple alert. Photo from across the piazza. Tessa leaning on Aaron's chest, lips near his neck.
Intimate but deniable. It wasn't about whether she kissed him. It was about how public it looked. I texted Carl, more like that. Pull metadata from the boutique pic. Confirm time and coordinates. He replied, already did. She was lying about the wine tour that afternoon. They were in town at 2:17 p.m., not the vineyard like her post said. I stared at the screen, then at the framed photo above our fireplace. Her laughing on a boat in Miami. Our second anniversary. She had wine in one hand and her other hand was on my knee. I took it down, set it on the coffee table, then opened a new folder, labeled it Timeline Evidence. Inside, I started matching photos to her Instagram stories, cross-referencing captions, looking for any breadcrumbs she didn't know she was dropping. That was the thing about Tessa. She was always so public about her private life, but she never considered that someone might actually pay attention. I started recording voice memos, short ones. Day 4, her caption says, resting at the hotel, but Carl confirmed they dined at a 3-star with a private booth. GPS pings match. Save, move to folder. This wasn't grief. This was documentation. I wasn't heartbroken. I was methodical. Every love note she ever wrote me, scanned. Every receipt from her bachelorette planning spreadsheet, screen captured. Every dinner reservation she booked in both their names, downloaded. Carl kept feeding me breadcrumbs. Meanwhile, I was baking the cake. In the condo, I stopped using our shared bathroom. Started sleeping on the couch, not out of emotion, just proximity. I wanted less of her around. I turned our bedroom into a staging area for the paperwork I was assembling. She kept posting. A photo at sunset, him behind her, no tags. Then, last night in Florence, can't wait to come home to my real life. The word real stuck out. She always used that word when she was playing pretend. She posted it like a spell, hoping if she said it enough, it would cover up the lie. But back here, her real life was being quietly dismantled. The gas bill now came only to her name. The mail forwarding was already in motion. And a certain lawyer I'd retained had started drafting a formal notice of engagement termination under breach of implied fidelity. She had 2 days left in Italy. She had no idea her return itinerary would include something even more unexpected than customs. She was in a silk robe, feet propped on the edge of the hotel balcony, sipping from a flute of something expensive she didn't pay for. Aaron had just ordered room service, again, and was humming to himself as he scrolled through the wine list, probably trying to impress her with another overpriced bottle of red he couldn't pronounce. Tuscany was on full display behind her like a postcard. Sunlight over vineyards, terracotta rooftops, and the haze of curated romance that made poor decisions look poetic. Then her phone buzzed. Subject, ring return and legal notification from O'Malley and Price LLP Attachments. Itemized reimbursement invoice. Legal notice of emotional distress claim. Clause 17A. Breach of engagement contract. At first, she smirked. Thought it was a joke. Thought maybe I had finally cracked under the pressure and decided to throw a fit with some cut-rate lawyer who'd send a template demand letter and then vanish. She clicked it open, thumb moving with lazy confidence. Until the attachments loaded, the itemized invoice was precise down to the penny. Engagement ring value, appraisal certificate included, wedding expenses incurred by client to date, retainer for legal counsel, associated costs for venue cancellation, catering forfeiture, and non-refundable honeymoon bookings. Total, 21,840. It wasn't the number that got her. It was the tone. It read like a man who didn't want her back. He wanted receipts. She read the next paragraph. Under State Code 42.5, Section A, an engagement constitutes an implied contract with shared expectations of monogamy and good faith. Documented breach, when demonstrably public and reputationally damaging, can constitute grounds for emotional damages and recovery of investment. Her thumb hovered over the phone screen. Then she reread it, slowly. Aaron was pouring himself a glass of Sangiovese when he glanced over. Everything okay? She didn't answer at first. Tess? Yeah. Her voice was brittle. She tapped the screen off. Just spam. But her posture changed. That little performative looseness she wore like perfume. It tightened. Shoulders drawn, breath shallow. Her hand went to the stem of her glass, but she didn't drink. Aaron raised an eyebrow. Spam makes you look like you saw a ghost? She forced a laugh. Legal spam. He smiled and turned back to the wine. As long as it's not your fiancé coming to his senses. She smiled back, but something flickered behind her eyes. Because for the first time, it wasn't a bluff, it wasn't a meltdown, or a jealous boyfriend slamming doors. It wasn't a, "Why are you doing this to me?" text, or a drunken voicemail at 2 a.m. It was paperwork. Quiet, cold, clean. It was final. She opened the email again, rereading the closing paragraph. Client is open to a non-contentious resolution provided the ring is returned via insured courier within 14 days. Failure to comply will result in a formal filing. We are prepared to present evidence documenting public romantic behavior inconsistent with the terms of an exclusive engagement. The next attachment was the bombshell, a screenshot taken from a boutique's official Instagram page. She and Aaron arm in arm laughing. The boutique owner had captioned it, "Sweetest couple ever, wishing you two a lifetime of happiness." The post was geotagged, time-stamped, metadata included, and that's when it really hit her. This wasn't just about feelings. This was about proof. She tapped through her Instagram stories trying to remember what she'd posted that day. Had she tagged the vineyard? Had she lied about where they were? Had she said something that could be pulled out, twisted, used, and more importantly, who was watching? Because Aaron sure as hell wasn't taking those photos, and she hadn't seen a single tourist point a phone in their direction, which meant someone was following them, someone she hadn't noticed, someone who wasn't there for romance or sunsets or pasta, someone being paid. She put the phone down, picked up her glass, and finally drank. But it didn't go down smoothly. It burned. Later that night, she sat on the edge of the hotel bed in silence while Aaron snored beside her, oblivious. Her phone glowed in the dark. She scrolled her inbox again. The subject line sat there like a brick. Ring, return, and legal notification. She tapped reply, began typing. "Hey Adam, I got your message. I think we should talk before this gets..." Then she stopped, deleted the draft, because something in the back of her mind, something sharp and unpleasant, was telling her she was no longer in control of the story. Not online, not at home, and definitely not with me. It started small, like hairline fractures in glass, barely noticeable until the pressure shifted. The first was a text from Lexi, Tessa's self-declared best friend since college and the unofficial hype woman for every bad decision she'd made in the last decade. Lexi: "Hey, super random, but are you and Tessa still getting married? I thought you were, but I just saw her feed and I'm confused." I stared at it, sipped my coffee, then typed one line. "Me, check her story highlights." She read it instantly. Bubbles appeared, then disappeared, no reply. A few hours later, a notification popped up. Lexi had removed the Tessa's bridal shower highlight from her own Instagram. I didn't need Carl to track that one. By the end of the day, the groomsmen group chat went silent. Then one peeled off. "Danny, yo, saw some stuff online. Just wanted to check. Are you okay, man?" Me, doing better every hour. He didn't ask anything else. Then came the first un-RSVP, my cousin Megan. She emailed the planner directly, CC'd me. "Given recent developments, I'll unfortunately have to decline the invitation. Wishing everyone clarity and peace during this time." Polite, vague, but the subtext wasn't subtle. This was the thing about social media. It's a high-wire act, and Tessa had danced barefoot on it for years, always performing, always glowing. But the moment your balance wavers, the crowd isn't there to catch you. They're there to watch. And her glow? It was dimming. She still posted, of course. Of course she did. She had no other fuel. One day, it was a carousel of Amalfi Coast photos, her in a backless sundress, laughing with a glass of wine, Aaron's face cropped out, but his reflection visible in the glass of a cafe window. Caption: "Taking time to breathe, to be." The next day, a reel of slow-motion footage, waves, sunsets, the clink of forks at candlelit tables, background music, some indie song about finding yourself, hashtagged healing bachelorette escape, self-care trip. But the likes were stalling, the comments were thinning, and the ones that remained felt off,
Lauren in bloom. Wait, where's Adam? At Jenny writes, did something happen? Weren't you just tasting cakes last week? One particularly blunt reply came from someone I didn't recognize.
At Mr. Bricks, is this the same ex you once called your greatest mistake in a Q&A? I almost laughed. The real shift came when her cousin, Becca, shared a cryptic story, a black screen, white text. Not everything needs to be shared for likes. Some choices hurt more than they heal. No tags, but it was clearly a shot across the Atlantic. And suddenly, Tessa went from being the glowing bride-to-be to something more complicated, something people didn't want to be seen endorsing. Carl messaged me that afternoon. Carl, your girl's public image is tanking. You want me to keep tracking or let it burn? Me, keep tracking, quietly. I'm not done building. He sent back a thumbs up emoji. I don't think I'd ever seen one look so threatening. Later that night, I saw something odd. One of Tessa's newer friends, someone she'd only known since joining that toxic Pilates group, posted a photo at dinner. A group shot, 5 women. Tessa's seat, conspicuously empty. The caption, girls' night minus the drama. The next morning, Tessa posted a photo of herself alone on a bench overlooking the hills. No smile, no filters. Just her holding a journal and staring into space like a stock photo for emotional self-discovery. Caption, growth hurts sometimes, but silence says more than shouting ever could. I screenshotted it, not because it mattered, but because it was the first time she'd ever admitted to being alone without dressing it up in sparkles. The silence she referred to, that was me. And it wasn't over. The comments that still rolled in were mostly passive support, people who didn't know or didn't want to know, but the real circle, the ones who were at our engagement dinner, who toasted to forever, who posed for those she said yes posts, they were fading, pulling away one sorry, I won't be able to make it at a time. She had flaunted her nostalgia like it was a virtue, a brave reclaiming of something lost. But now, it just looked like betrayal with a pretty filter. And betrayal doesn't photograph well once people start paying attention. Aaron was already asleep, sprawled across the hotel bed with his arm hanging over the edge, snoring softly, like the world had never held a consequence worth worrying about. The bedside table was cluttered, empty wine glasses, a crumpled room service receipt, a business card from a vineyard tour guide who flirted too much. Tessa sat in the armchair across the room, legs tucked under her, phone glowing against her pale face. She hadn't posted anything in 12 hours. For her, that was a blackout. The silence gnawed at her. She scrolled backward, past gondolas and rooftop selfies, past candlelit dinners, past the slow-mo clips of waves and espresso art and boutique dresses, back to the life she hadn't looked at in days. There was a picture of Adam in their kitchen, sleeves rolled, brow furrowed, as he tried to figure out the espresso machine she'd insisted on buying. Their golden retriever sat at his feet, looking up like he was the whole universe. Next photo, a blurry shot of Adam sleeping on the couch, their dog curled under his arm. She'd captioned it, "My 2 boys." Hundreds of likes. She felt a knot tighten behind her ribs. In another tab, she opened their shared cloud album, one they hadn't touched in weeks. Their honeymoon folder was already created, sitting there empty, just a label, Santorini 2024. She tapped it, nothing inside. Then impulse took over. She opened her messages, found his name, Adam. It still had a little heart next to it. She stared at the typing field for a long time, then slowly wrote, "Can we talk when I land? Just talk, please." She hit send, the message delivered, no read receipt, no response. It was the not knowing that made it worse. She locked her phone, then unlocked it, checked again. Still nothing. Outside, the moon cast pale light over the hills of Tuscany. It should have felt romantic, transformative, but instead, it just felt far from home. The next morning was sterile in a way only travel mornings are. Fluorescent airport lighting, TSA lines, the low hiss of espresso machines trying to stay relevant. Tessa stood at the Alitalia counter, passport in hand, sunglasses hiding what little sleep she'd gotten. Aaron stood beside her, yawning, tapping at his phone like this was just another Monday. "Round trip?" the flight attendant asked, smiling. Tessa hesitated. She glanced at Aaron, who didn't look up. He was reading an article about the top 5 wines of Tuscany, already talking about coming back in the fall. "Round trip?" the attendant repeated. "Yes," Tessa said quietly. Round trip. The word felt dishonest, not because she didn't plan to come back to Italy, but because she wasn't sure what she was flying home to. In line for security, Aaron tried to joke about something the waiter said the night before. Tessa laughed, but it was off. Flat, she wasn't listening. Her eyes kept darting back to her phone. Still no reply. She turned off read receipts, then turned them back on, then off again. She looked around the terminal, watched couples with arms wrapped around each other, solo travelers with headphones and backpacks. No one looked like they were questioning their entire life mid-boarding call. She refreshed the message again. Still nothing. By the time they boarded, Aaron had fully checked out. He was sipping complimentary wine, watching a documentary on silent retreats. Tessa stared at the seat back in front of her. Her phone sat in her lap like a dead thing. She opened the message one more time. Read it again. Can we talk when I land? Just talk, please. Then she did something she never thought she'd do. She opened his Instagram. He hadn't posted anything in a week, but the last post was still up. Him and the dog standing in front of their house. Caption: built this for us. The comment section had shifted. What used to be fire emojis and hard-eyed friends now held things like at Katie Finn, you deserve better. At Mike Lanes, heard what happened. Rooting for you, bro. At Live, Laugh, Love, your silence says it all. She realized then that while she'd been building a fantasy abroad, he'd been building something else. Distance, support, narrative. He wasn't waiting. And suddenly, she felt it. That strange, hollow panic she'd expected him to feel when she first told him about the trip. Back then, she thought he'd beg, plead, maybe cry. Instead, he just nodded. Now she was the one sitting in silence, craving an answer that wouldn't come. As the plane rose into the air and Italy shrank behind her, Tessa stared out the window, suddenly unsure of where or who she'd be landing as. And for the first time, it occurred to her, maybe Adam hadn't just let her go. Maybe he'd pushed her off the ledge and closed the door behind her. The air inside the arrivals terminal smelled like over-roasted coffee and old carpet. It was too bright, too loud, and completely unforgiving. Tessa shuffled forward in a line of tired passengers, dragging her overpriced carry-on behind her with a squeaky wheel that now seemed loud enough to echo. Her heels clicked unevenly against the tile as she adjusted her sunglasses, even though they did nothing to hide the fatigue painted across her face. Aaron had peeled off quickly after landing. He had a layover, a different terminal, and a weak excuse about not making things weird. She didn't argue. They hadn't said much on the flight either. She wasn't sure what they were now. Something in the air had shifted mid-Atlantic, or maybe in the silence that followed every unread message. She kept glancing around the terminal as she passed through customs. She didn't know if she expected Adam to be waiting, with flowers, with fury, with some Hollywood apology scene that would play out in her favor. A small part of her, the part that still clung to curated happy endings, imagined him pulling her into a hug and whispering something like, "Let's just forget it happened." Instead, at baggage claim, it was a stranger. A woman in a gray blazer standing next to the luggage carousel, holding a white envelope with deliberate stillness. Her nails were trimmed, no smile. Tessa Morgan? Tessa blinked behind her sunglasses. Yes? The woman handed her the envelope. You've been served. She walked away before Tessa could even open her mouth. No explanation, no chance to ask. Just gone. The envelope felt heavier than it should. She stood there for a moment, frozen, letting the rumble of the carousel fill the space around her. Then, with mechanical fingers, she peeled it open. 3 documents inside, neatly clipped. The first, notice of lawsuit filed by Adam Weller, claiming emotional distress, financial damages, and reputational harm stemming from breach of engagement. The second, demand for return of engagement assets, specifically a 2.3-carat diamond ring purchased with intent to marry, now legally considered an asset under engagement laws in the state of jurisdiction, non-return subject to litigation. The third, supporting evidence list screenshots, geolocation pings, public-facing photographs of romantic behavior with a known prior partner during an active engagement. Each page had her name at the top. She staggered back a step. Her hand flew to her chest like her lungs had forgotten how to work. The terminal noise seemed to fade under a sudden rush of blood in her ears. And then she looked up. Across the baggage claim, behind a row of travelers and their carts, stood Adam. still, hands in his jacket pockets, calm, detached, watching, not a word, not a movement forward, just observing, like she was no longer someone he knew, but someone he had studied, like the experiment was complete and the data had been collected. Their eyes met. For a moment something flickered there, maybe memory, maybe mourning, but not regret. Then, without a nod, without a glance back, Adam turned and walked away, past the exit, past the automatic doors, past her, gone. Tessa stood there, envelope clutched in one hand, suitcase abandoned at her side, eyes wide and unblinking. A child nearby tugged on their mother's sleeve. Why is that lady crying? Tessa didn't notice. Or maybe she did. But she couldn't move. She couldn't run after him, because deep down, beneath the shock, beneath the ache, beneath the shivering realization of everything she'd just lost, there was one thing she now understood with terrifying clarity. He hadn't come to fight. He had come to end it. And he had done it in a way she never expected. Not with screaming, but with silence, strategy, and the law. The rideshare dropped her off at the curb like she was just another tired traveler coming home to someone waiting inside. The sky was gray, low with clouds, and the city buzzed with that muffled, late afternoon hum. People heading home, dogs being walked, car horns arguing over nothing. Tessa hoisted one suitcase over the other and made her way up the steps to the condo, balancing her handbag with a practiced flick of the wrist. She was already rehearsing her lines. Let's just talk. It got out of hand. I made a mistake, but it wasn't what you think. Maybe she'd cry. Not too much. Just enough to be human, vulnerable, redeemable. She reached for her key, slid it in. It didn't turn. She paused, tried again, jiggled it, checked the key ring. Maybe it was the wrong one. No. Same blue tag, same little gold initial charm she'd picked out when they first moved in together. Click. Nothing. Her pulse skipped. She pressed the buzzer. No answer. She buzzed again and again, then pounded on the door like the building itself owed her an explanation. A minute later, the lobby door opened, not from Adam, but from Marcus, the building's longtime doorman. He stepped out cautiously, holding a sealed envelope in one hand. Tessa. She blinked. Marcus? Hey, my key isn't working. I think it's jammed or something. Can you let me in? He shook his head. I can't do that. What? Come on. I live here. He handed her the envelope. Inside, a notarized letter, a copy of the lease, a statement of removal, signed by the primary tenant, Adam. Legal backing under Tenancy Clause 6A, co-resident may be removed at the discretion of the leaseholder in the event of separation or pending litigation. She stared at it like it was written in a foreign language. Marcus shifted awkwardly. He brought all the paperwork by last week. Locks were changed yesterday. Marcus, she said, voice cracking, I literally just got back from the airport. I have nowhere else to go. He looked genuinely pained. I'm sorry, Tessa, I really am, but I can't let you in. I'd lose my job. She didn't argue. Couldn't. She just stepped back and slowly lowered herself onto the cold concrete steps outside the building, one suitcase on either side of her, designer luggage now reduced to symbols of displacement. Her phone buzzed, email from the planner. Sorry to hear the wedding's been called off. I've closed your file as requested. Then another. The florist. We've stopped all prep per Adam's message. Wishing you both peace. Another. The caterer. Will apply the non-refundable deposit to any future event should you wish to rebook. Another. Her own attorney. Following up on the notice of service, we'll need to meet immediately to discuss the engagement asset dispute. She scrolled. Her inbox was turning into an obituary for a life she didn't realize had already ended. The notifications kept piling in. Friends removed her from group chats. One texted her privately. Jen, I'm not taking sides, but you have to admit this looks really bad. Another text came in from her mother. Mom, why didn't you tell me you canceled the wedding? I just got a call from Aunt Donna. She wanted to scream, to throw her phone, to rewind 2 weeks and unbook the flights and untype the captions and unsay the words. Don't be controlling. Instead, she just sat there, in a city where she no longer had a door key, with 2 suitcases filled with clothes that suddenly belonged to someone she no longer was. The longer she sat, the more invisible she became. Neighbors passed. One glanced at her, frowned, and kept walking. Someone else slowed down, as if to offer help, then thought better of it. She looked like a woman waiting for someone to come pick her up. No one was coming. The irony was unbearable. She'd flown across the world to test a man's limits. Thought if he really loved her, he'd panic, beg, show up halfway through the trip to win her back. Instead, he didn't fight. He just deleted her. Not with rage, with planning, with paperwork, with silence. She had played her game like it was a social experiment, but Adam had played it like a chess match, and now she was out of moves. It took her 2 hours to find a hotel that would accept a walk-in at nearly midnight with no reservation and a face still streaked with travel sweat and disbelief. The clerk didn't recognize her. Tessa Morgan, the Instagram darling, the girl with the beach waves and the curated aesthetics. To him, she was just another woman dragging 2 bags behind her and blinking through what looked suspiciously like a breakdown. The room was small, smelled faintly of bleach and synthetic lavender. One window overlooked an alley lit by a single flickering streetlight. She stared at her reflection in the mirror above the desk, makeup smudged, eyes red, hair flattened by the flight and the fallout. And for the first time in years, she didn't reach for her phone to fix the lighting or tilt her chin. She just looked at the tired woman who'd walked out of a life she hadn't realized was built to last, only to find herself shut out of it permanently. She sat on the edge of the bed. The mattress creaked, opened her phone, pulled up Adam's name. The chat was still there. Dozens of blue speech bubbles, his old responses buried beneath the weight of recent silence. And then, with trembling fingers, she started typing. I don't even know where to start. Delete. Rewrite. I never meant for it to go this far. Delete. She inhaled shakily. Then typed, you were the stable one, the calm one. I knew you'd never leave. I counted on it. And that's why I tested you. Because I thought love had to be louder, more dramatic. I thought I needed romance, passion, something that felt wild. Pause, her thumb hovered, then, but wild isn't love. Wild is what you run to when you don't know what real is. And I didn't see what I had until I came back and realized it was gone. You were real all along. Another breath, another line. I know I broke it. I know I can't undo it, but I needed you to hear me say it. Sorry, Adam. I really, truly am. She hit send. It delivered. She stared at the screen, waiting for the tiny read indicator to appear. It didn't. She refreshed. Nothing. She swiped
Down again, closed the app, reopened it, still delivered, not read. She sat like that for an hour, maybe more, refreshing, checking the battery, turning the screen off, then back on, whispering to herself, come on, just read it, just let me say it to you. But the silence held. It wasn't accidental. It was deliberate. That message, the most honest, raw thing she'd written in years, was sitting right there in his pocket. She knew he saw the notification, knew he felt the phone buzz, knew the silence that followed was louder than anything she could have said. And that's when it broke. Not her voice, not her heart, not her composure, but her certainty. Because in that moment, Tessa realized that this wasn't limbo. It wasn't a pause in a long fight. It was the end. She could scream, she could beg, she could send poems and promises and apologies dressed up as revelations, but Adam wouldn't hear them. Not because he didn't care, but because he no longer chose to. She stared at the message one last time. Her own words, gray and sad, hanging there like a towel in an empty house. Then, with the finality of someone deleting a future that no longer existed, she slid left on the thread, tapped delete conversation, gone, no backup.
No archive, just a blank screen where life used to be. She lay back on the mattress, still in her jeans, staring at the ceiling fan spinning slowly above her like time mocking her with every rotation. The silence wasn't cruel, it was earned. And she was finally starting to understand why he never looked back. The ocean was calm that afternoon, quiet waves lapping the shore, a soft wind pushing the scent of salt and driftwood inland. Adam stood barefoot in the sand, pants rolled just high enough to avoid the foam, watching his nephew try and fail to skip a flat stone across the surface. Like this, Adam said, picking up a smooth, round one. He flicked it low and clean. 1, 2, 3 bounces before it sank. His nephew clapped. You're like a ninja with rocks. Adam smiled faintly, tossing the next one without watching where it landed. His phone buzzed in his back pocket. He ignored it at first, let the tide creep over his ankles. Then, with a slow breath, he pulled it out. Message from the courier service. Subject, ring recovery. Final attempt.
Body. Recipient has not returned item. Legal counsel recommends proceeding with asset valuation and recovery claim. He stared at it for a few seconds, then typed one word. Proceed. He tucked the phone back into his pocket, picked up another stone, watched the sun dip a little lower behind the clouds. That evening, while he grilled dinner on a modest deck overlooking the water, his lawyer filed the motion. A clean document. Standard language, breach of contract, appraised value attached, documentation already included from the prior filing, public photographs, receipts, engagement contract terms. It was the final thread. A symbolic one, sure, but also a legally binding one. Tessa hadn't returned the ring. Whether out of spite, denial, or simple inertia, she'd kept it, as if by clinging to that one glittering object she could pretend she hadn't already lost everything it stood for. She hadn't responded to the suit.
No statement, no apology, no payment. She'd gone quiet in her own way, too. Deleted dozens of posts, archived others, unfollowed people who had unfollowed her first. The once glittering bride-to-be now reduced to shadows of her former online persona. That day, while Adam plated burgers and corn on the cob for his sister's family, she posted a new photo, her hand, bare, resting on a coffee cup, nails chipped, thumb blurred, no ring, no smile, just a vague, try-hard caption. Resetting. The comments were off, not limited, not hidden, just off. No hearts, no fire emojis, no, you got this, queen. Just silence. Adam didn't see it. He wasn't watching anymore. He'd deleted all his accounts 2 weeks ago. No more shared memories popping up. No more tag suggestions. No more people asking, is this her, when they stumbled on her profile. He had moved, not just houses, but away from the version of himself who tolerated slow betrayal dressed up as self-growth. The man who once wrote checks for flower arrangements while his fiancée plotted nostalgia trips with her ex. Now he woke up near the shore, brewed his own coffee, read actual paper newspapers, and returned calls on his time. The silence that once signaled heartbreak now felt like ownership, a life on his terms. Tessa's ring, if it was still sitting in some drawer, was no longer a symbol of anything sacred, just a pending asset in a legal process she never imagined he'd actually go through with, because she'd never expected him to respond like this. She'd expected anger, screaming, slammed doors, maybe even some last-minute begging, a man who'd throw away his pride just to keep her. But what she got was worse. She got precision, she got documentation, she got distance, and worst of all, she got no voice in the ending. Adam's phone buzzed again. He didn't look. He didn't have to. Somewhere, a process was unfolding exactly as it should. Somewhere, the past was being wrapped up with notarized ribbon. And here, in the salt air and quiet, a man who'd once been the backdrop to someone else's performance stood alone, whole again, not triumphant, just free.